Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to Money, Sex, and God. This is a live recording if you're watching over on Facebook. If you are watching the replay on Facebook or anywhere where you hear podcasts, thanks for jumping in. This is Money, Sex, and God. This podcast is all about the things that we're not used to talking about the taboo and bringing it forefront. I love to rattle people's energies, talk about money, talk about wealth creation, talk about sex and the shit about sex that we don't want to talk about, and talk about spirituality and what it really means and how we really drop into it. So the reason I have this podcast is just because I get to bring in friends and I get to talk to them about cool shit. And y'all get to hear me have conversations with some of my friends and some of the people that I love dearly and what they're up to in the world. So you're in for a treat whenever you listen to this podcast, but especially today, we have someone that I've had the honor of knowing for a few months now. And I've only really graced the tip, I think, of the genius of her work, her life's work so far. But this woman is someone that just this deep kinhood. And I think that kind of happens being a sex worker. There's just like this kinship that happens where you're in it together, like we got this, like, whenever I meet another sex worker, I'm like, you get me, I get you. It becomes really easy. So I feel that with this guest. And if you're watching live, just a heads up, you can share this video with people that you love, people that want to get in on this conversation. They can ask questions. You can tag people, because this is going to be live. So I'll be checking the feed for comments and we can actually have our guest answering your questions live, which is pretty dope. So if you want to do that, just type in the comment section, but I don't want to take any more time because I really want to turn the spotlight over to someone who has been working in the sex industry for, I think, 26 years on your bio. That's incredible. You got time on me, girl. You got more stories than I do, I'm sure. And someone who has the depth of wisdom around sexuality because of that. She is also queer and kinky and into all sorts of polyamory and the juice that we love over here at Money, Sex, and God, and is the founder of a beautiful organization that we raised money for at our most recent event, the BIPOC Adult Industry Collective. So without further ado, Sinnamon, thank you so much for jumping in and coming on. I'm so happy to have you and just to hang out.
Thank you so much. I'm glad that we were able to do this. I know we had to reschedule before, but I'm so glad that we were able to carve out time so we could catch up and do this interview.
I know, right? Like me too. Life just gets wild. You and I both create so much so fast.
Yeah.
Are like, it's like, it just gets crazy. It's like years go by. I love it. And I think the reason we create so well is because we're tapped into sex, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking about, how to help other people tap into their like innermost creativity using sex and sex magic. And I've been really, I'm very interested in sex magic. I know a lot of other people are really interested in sex magic. I think a lot of people are not as familiar with sex magic, depending on, at what age they discovered, tarot cards at Spencer's gift store. Yeah, I'm very much in tune with using like sex magic to help me create.
Yeah. And you've really created a life for yourself in that. I mean, we were sitting having tea, comparing stories of the lives that we've created through, I would say, through the magic of our pussies, to be honest, right? Like that's why we've created what we've created. I have a friend of mine who's a fellow sex worker, and we always talk about how like the people you want working for you, the people you want on your team are sex workers, because we understand creation. We understand how to get what we want. Right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean we haven't seen some shit. I mean, I'm sure you have stories, right?
Yeah.
But there's a piece to that. Yeah. There's an energy. So take us through, like, what have you created in your life? Where were you before you started all of this? Was there ever a moment where you didn't have your turn on and have your pussy be a part of you, or was it always there from birth?
That's a good question. I think that I have been in touch with my pussy for a really long time. I've been able to tap into that part of myself to create magic, as long as I can remember. I think, was it there from birth? I'm not sure, but definitely, like, it's almost always been there. The types of things that I've created for myself, like you said, I created a whole life. Before I officially got into sex work, I did some survival sex work as a houseless youth. And so, I was kicked out of my house early, like many people in my generation were. I'm so glad to see that that's not happening as much anymore, as people are starting to become more aware. But I was, I lived with people for a place to stay. I lived with men for a place to stay. I had sex with people for a place to stay, or for food, or for just to be able to kind of live for a while. And then I got into the business after I was, as a part of my divorce. It was a gift that I gave myself because I was working 2 retail jobs, and this is 93. I think minimum wage might have been like $5.25 an hour or something like that, and working 2 jobs, making taking going to school, carrying a full load of credits, and trying to like literally dropping the kids at the daycare behind my college, and then going to class, and then picking them up and dropping them at my next door neighbor who was the sitter, and then going to work. And then I was trying to balance life as best as I could, as a 19-year-old with 2 toddlers under the age of 2. But it wasn't realistic. Like, I wasn't able to, I still, even working 2 jobs, I couldn't pay my rent. And so getting into the business really allowed me to build a life for myself, and to give myself a career, and to be able to travel the world, and to be able to hike the rainforest, and to create a holidays in Paris where I could like trace the path of Anais Nin and Henry Miller, and go crate digging in remote places, and just those kinds of experiences all came into my life because of my pussy. Like, it's like to be able to make those kinds of choices and live that kind of life. But also, I've been able to also do other kinds of things, like using the name and the legacy that I've created for myself, and the career that I've created for myself has opened other kinds of doors also. I love throwing a good party, and I've been able to to create really magical events and experiences for people, because people trust me based on the career that I've had.
Right.
I've been able to to interview celebrities as a reporter for hip hop magazines, and I've been able, like, there's just so many different doors that I was able to open because of the fact that I did this work. And while I consider myself to be a working class sex worker, I live in a, even though I do have a lot of privilege because I have worked primarily indoors and I've primarily worked in front of the camera. Right. I also, I am, considering that I live in New York City and I fall within the moderate income bracket, like I'm still like,
you're basically poor if you're in moderate income.
It's like, because I have been there and I've experienced a lot of things that other people are experiencing, and a lot of the shit that the shit that I experienced is not unique. Like the shit that other people have experienced is not unique. Like these things, like they're a theme that run across, intersections of race and gender and class. And it is, because I've had those experiences, because, my pussy led me to creating something really powerful that hopefully will become the legacy that I leave, for other people later on.
I just got chills because yes, because that is the legacy that you're leaving, just so you know. I can feel that in my whole body. And I'm, we talked about this, but my big desire is to decriminalize sex work in this lifetime. Right. And you and I both are really, really with each other on that piece, because we've seen it and we've seen what the decriminalization will do for our community.
Yeah, and I have a new goal also, is a new manifestation that I would like to, to see in my lifetime, which is to see sex work as a protected class, also, so that people cannot be discriminated against based, in terms of banking, in terms of housing, in terms of employment.
The banks. How many times we get our fucking bank shut down?
I know, the banks, the payment processors, the Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Square, Stripes of the world. Like, it's, people can't, people choose this work, largely because of money. Right. And for banks to shut people out is, puts people in, further states of vulnerability, and actually opens the door for exploitation. Yeah. We when people don't have their own, it's kind of a sidebar, but not a sidebar, but, when people don't have a bank account, they are, they are more likely to be exploited by these, check cashing places. If people don't have their own account, then they may have to have someone else take in money for them, or hold money for them, or keep money for them, or they're more likely to get robbed, or they're more likely, there's this, the levels of vulnerability that people are likely to experience because of the fact that they may not have a bank account is it puts them further at risk. And so, and also you can't access housing, you can't, if you don't have a bank account, you can't, it's, all these, so many places are going cashless. It's, how do you live without access to financial services in a capitalist society? Right. All about finances, so that is the new manifestation. In addition to decriminalization, I would like to see sex work as a protected class during my lifetime. Yeah,
as there's a dehumanizing piece to it that our society puts on it, where no, you don't get money, no, you don't get. And I remember, I've told you this, the reason that I quit was because of lack of protection. Right, got into it similar to you, college student, didn't have any money, what the fuck, had to make more money. Here it is. Right. And then fell in love with it over time. And I'm curious about, if that happened to you. I went in going I'm doing this just because I need it. And then over 4 or 5 years in, I was like, holy wow, this is what I meant to do. I'm supposed to work with sexuality on the planet. When did you have an aha moment, or did it just develop for you over time, that feeling?
I don't know. I don't know if there was an aha moment. So yeah, definitely developed over time. The very first time I, had sex on camera and someone gave me a check afterwards. I think they gave me, I think it was a check. I want to say it was a check. Yeah. It was oh, that was easy. Right. It's it was just a guy and his camera, and I got paid almost four times my rent at the time. Yeah. And so being able to discovering that this thing that I had already been doing, I was already having sex with people, I was already exploring my sexuality with a partner, to be able to take that and pay my rent with it was oh, that this is a thing. I could get used to this.
Yeah. And this is the point here, is that's what an entrepreneur is. That's what an entrepreneur does. right? And that's why the dehumanization and turning sex workers into second-class citizens doesn't make any fucking sense, because what an entrepreneur is, right? Like, let's say an entrepreneur is like, I'm really good at baking bread. Okay, I'm going to go open a bread shop, right? And make a bunch of money at it. And it's going to feel easy and effortless. That's the same shit that sex workers are doing, right? We were always the ones that people would go to talk about sex. We were always the flirtatious ones. This is innately who we are.
Already.
Right. Right. And so we're just understanding that this is who we are. This is our gift to the world. So we deserve to be treated as entrepreneurs and have the protection of entrepreneurs in it.
I mean, especially if you have to pay taxes, like, there's no reason why I should be paying as much as I do in taxes and simultaneously also be experiencing banking discrimination, because how does the IRS think they're going to get their money if I can't bank? Like, I don't understand, but yeah, I mean, we are liable for the money that we make. Like you have to have banking. Like, everybody has to have banking. It is the like, everything in our lives revolves around our bank account. Like, you cannot purchase a flight, you cannot purchase a train ticket. Like, even now in New York City, you can tap with your phone, with your iPhone, and your Apple Card can pay for your train fare. And it's like, I cannot tell you how many times I've left out of my house without my Metro card and don't have any, or my wallet, but I have my phone in my hand. As long as I can tap to be able to get on the train, then I'm okay. But if Apple Card decided that because they're able to track your phone, to look into your phone, if they were to decide, oh, well, this person is a sex worker, we're going to shut down their Apple Card, where does that leave me? And obviously, I'm speaking from a position of privilege, because not everybody has an iPhone, and not every sex worker has an iPhone, and not every sex worker has an Apple Card. But for me, that's my reality, right? And I've lost numerous bank accounts. I was in the first round of people who lost their PayPal. I lost my Square account, even though I was swiping credit cards with it. I lost my my Venmo account, and I think of all these, there's so many people who I look at who are in the same position, where it's like, well, how am I supposed to get money, or how am I supposed to give someone money? Like, if my niece calls me and says that she needs money for her car needs to be fixed and she needs some money, or she needs groceries to get her through to the weekend, how am I supposed to get that to her if I don't have a way of getting it to her? And I don't think people really understand how devastating being separated from financial services can be for our community.
And there's an emotional, right? So for me, I remember when my PayPal was shut down. I remember when bank accounts were shut down, right? There's an emotional thing that happens where you feel like, wow, I'm not allowed to be me, right? Society is telling me that I can't be me. And so sex workers have adapted. We are an adaptable species. We've understood, here's how right? But that's an added effort that's unnecessary, right? We shouldn't have to go above and beyond to try to figure out how to
companies should not be able to withhold your money from you,
right?
Because they decided today that you are not allowed to be here. They should not be able to rob you of your hard-earned money just because they decided that you are not allowed to be on their platform. Give people their money first, and then close down their account. But we see it happen time and time again, where they'll close down someone's account and keep their money.
I've lost thousands. They keep it. The cops, when they raided our dungeon, they took all our money. It was like $20,000 that we never saw. And then the other thing is there's an exclusionary act to this, right? You're saying you there, rest of society here, you here. And what bothers me so much about that is the nature of the work that sex workers do, because I've seen this over the past, 2 decades of playing in this work. I was a sex worker, and then because of protection, now I'm doing sex coaching, right? Which is basically the same thing. I'm just not having sex with my clients, but we're turning them on, right? So it's the same concept. Right? Again, adaptability. For me, what I've seen is that this work is profoundly healing for our society. Right. And I don't know about you, but I can think of the number of times that grown men, 30 years older than me, I've sat in their penthouse apartment in Manhattan, holding them as they cried, right? Holding them as they cried, and that's when I fell in love with the work. Just recognizing how we remove shame from our society. I have chills. It's like, how can the brilliance of what we're doing be separated? Because it's fucking brilliant, right? Can you speak to that? What like the healing of it and what you've noticed in your work?
Yeah, I mean, what I had an experience once with a older gentleman who was in his 70s, who was submissive and very much into impact play, and his wife of 50 years did not know that he was kinky, and he was not able to come out to her about being submissive because of his age and the time frame that they grew up in. And he mentioned to me that because of his advanced age, that he didn't go to play parties anymore because people just didn't want to play with him. This ageist idea of people, people aging out of of being sexy or being partners, right? And so after we went through all of the health protocols and making sure that it was safe to be able to have this kind of play with him, we had a really great session, and he cried afterwards because he felt like it was the first time in a long time that he had been able to have that kind of release, his ability to be himself, to be free, to receive the kind of sexual gratification that he was looking for. It had been a really long time, and I think about how many people, even with vanilla sex, who through their programming and their upbringing and the messages that they've received from society, community, family, about simple things like going down on a partner or having a partner go down on you is very, it's challenging for people to navigate. And my hope is that as we are moving more towards being a more sex positive culture, that that shame and stigma is being removed. But ultimately, that's only happening because of the hypervisibility of sex workers, right? It's like our culture is really has always adopted sex work into fashion, music, art, other kinds of culture as well. And so for with as much as Instagram and has been like a bane in our in for all of us in the industry, I really love the fact that we have so much hypervisibility now that people are able to remove that shame and stigma from their own lives, because they're able to see us in a way that affirms that you can have, all of the things, that you don't have to choose between being a Madonna or a whore, being a good husband or being a sexual being, or, being, having a wife and being able to fuck her in the ass. Like, there are, the more visible we are, the more people are able to look at us and see a mirror of our lives, our educational opportunities, whether we've had them or not, our families, our close connections, our chosen community. Like, the more people are able to see that all of these things can exist and simultaneously, also they can exist simultaneously with being sexual, with being free, with stepping into your whole self. That is the healing work, right?
That's right.
More so than what I do with a client or what you do with a client. Like, being able to exist publicly without any kind of apology that is the healing work.
Right. Right. Yeah. I'm just like underlining, bolding, highlighting. I'm going to make sure all the listeners are really hearing this, because it's like, it's the scarlet letter gets to go away, and the wholeness of everyone. Like, I love that you and I both have children. You're grandparent, right? Like, it's incredible. And I'm like, that doesn't make me any less sexy, kinky, hot, juicy. Yes. That doesn't mean I can't go and make money. Like, doesn't mean, right? Like, just having all of it. And I'm out in my neighborhood. My neighborhood knows. And some people just go, ah, and some people talk to me. Right. And that's okay, And
it's, and even the age piece, like, it's interesting to think that so many people think that you age out of being hot.
Yeah.
Like, or you age out of being sexual.
Some of the hottest sex I've ever had was with a 73-year-old. Listen, listen, there's something about age.
They've had practice.
Right.
I mean, yes, I feel like there, we are having more conversations now about age. Like, it's like being able to see people online that are, that are redefining what it means to be 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. Like, I just recently started following this 74-year-old woman who looks like she's in her 40s, and she is really super fit, and she's just absolutely gorgeous. You wouldn't know that she's in her 70s until she opens her mouth, because the language is different. Right? It's like the references are different. The types of anecdotes that she says, like the slang that she uses, are very unique to her era, right?
Yeah.
But when I see her, I'm like, God, she's gorgeous. And people people will look at me and they're like, oh, you're like, people who don't know me, like, they're always like, you look so young. Did you dye your hair? And it's like, no, I'm 47. And it's like, you're too young and I'm like, no, I'm not too young. Like, 47 is about when you start to go gray. Like,
right. Right. It is.
That's an actual biological phenomena. But it's, and I think also because there's so little conversation about menopause, and there's so few conversations. Menopause is the leading cause of sexual dysfunction in women, and so we have this idea, like, it's like, there's been I've had so many light bulb moments over my lifetime where it's like, oh, I get it now. Like, the men who were saying that their wives didn't want to have sex with them anymore didn't understand, and maybe the women did not either, that part of it is the physiological changes of the body, and that there's, you go from being from having spontaneous desire to having, reactive desire, and it's like, and now we have to relearn how to turn each other on, because of this thing that's happening. And it's like, and being able to understand that and learn about that allows people to to extend their sexual lives, as opposed to just assuming that, oh, that part of my life is gone now.
Yeah. And the more visible we can be, right? As people, right, as they age. And for me, it's like, the thing that I'm really fired up about is post-birth, right? Because I have a 6-year-old and we're working on a second, and like orgasm through pregnancy, orgasm through, we're gonna document my entire birth. You should come over. We're gonna have like a communal birth. It's gonna be so hot. You got to come over, say hi and hang out. It's gonna be so good. But
so we got COVID, so maybe.
Yeah, right. We'll see. Right, we'll see what happens with COVID. We're not pregnant yet. We're not pregnant yet. I'm guessing.
Gotta protect the star seed.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, but that's the idea, is like just normalization, right? And you and I and every sex worker on the planet, we've seen all the shit that people hide.
Yeah,
we've seen everything in the hidden drawers, and we're going, y'all are all the same. It's not that unique.
It's not that big of a deal.
Right? Can we talk about it?
But for so many people, it is a big deal.
Yeah.
There, we have been, we are programmed from birth. Like, even if you are not a Christian, if you do not grow up Christian, even if you do not grow up in under any kind of organized religion, we live in a society that tells you that you are supposed to wait until you get married, that touching yourself is wrong, that masturbating is not okay.
Yeah.
I just recently learned about about this Mormon teen thing that they do, where they like will enter the male will enter the vagina and just lay there, and then a friend will come over and jump on the bed. They call it jump humping. And so that way they're not actually having sex. And I'm like, what?
That's what I mean. Adaptability. Like, if you're gonna shut sex down, you better bet sex workers, Mormons, we're gonna figure out how to still fuck, right? Like,
but it's, when I think about things like that, it's like, we have like this kind of the amount of misinformation that we're given from a very early age about sex, around sex, this whole idea that people think that they have to be in love with someone to have sex with them,
right?
Or that if they have sex with someone,
that means they're in love, right?
That means that they're in love, right. And that means that the other person loves them too, and it creates this really toxic relationships. It opens the door to people pleasing and codependency and bad relationships and a lack of autonomy, because people don't understand that they can consent, that consent can be withdrawn, that they don't have to do it with somebody again just because they did it once. Like, people are given so much misinformation that it doesn't allow them to be free, and to exercise their freedom of their life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Like, they're not given that, and so like I just hope that the more visible that we are, the more people are able to access real information, the more people are able to kind of think differently about the lives that they want to live, the kind of person that they want to be, their gender, their sexuality, their orientation. Like, I just hope people will be able to use this access to sex workers living these big, full lives and be able to say, oh, I may not be interested in making money from what I'm doing, but I see that they actually are able to have it all. Like, I don't have to choose between being a sexual being and being a good person, because being a sexual being doesn't make me not a good person. Right. I can still volunteer to feed the homeless, have sex with my wife. Like, I can still, be I could still be a good parent and do the PTA meetings and suck my husband's dick. Like it's, there's, I can still have sex. I can have sex with someone of the same gender and still be able to go out into the world and have a good job if that's what they use. It's like, there's like, these things are not exclusive of one another. And I hope that just our existing allows people to exist in ways that make them happy.
Yeah. And what I'm really hearing, just to start to wrap, is like how we shift the ship, right? Like, how do we start to create the future that we desire? And I'm already hearing this piece about visibility, more visibility of sex workers. And those of us that are sexual beings, doesn't even have to be a sex worker. You don't have to choose transaction for it, right? But a sexual being, right? So anyone that's listening to this or on live with us, like, put yourself out there and show the world what's possible. You can live in your whole self. You can be in your whole self.
I encourage everybody to find a really good trauma-informed, sex positive, queer affirming therapist if that is what they need, so that they can find community for themselves that will allow them to share what they're thinking without judgment, to share what they're looking to explore without judgment, as long as consent is involved, and so that they can start to grow into their whole self. Like, this work is not something that you can do alone. You do have to do the work alone, but you need to have community to be able to do this work. So that you don't feel like you are, so when those moments come where you are questioning yourself and questioning the things that you are unlearning, that you have been taught about sex and sexuality and gender, that you have support from a trained professional who is able to hold space for you and help you work through those things, and also friends or community or chosen family that can, or a Facebook group, or like a podcast can affirm who you are and the life that you want to live. Because otherwise you continue to bump up against this,
the old you,
the old you and the misinformation, and change cannot happen when you're still receiving these negative messages
right,
about the person that you want to be.
That's right.
The person that you are. So
that's right. That's
yeah.
right. Yeah. And we have, so we have the pleasure circle over here in our community, and a lot of y'all are already in there that are watching or listening. Make sure you join in. That's a space where you can be fully you. This podcast will be uploaded into the pleasure circle, so everyone will be able to listen to it, which is awesome. And I know for you, Sinnamon, you have the BIPOC AIC, which is specifically targeted to those that are working within the adult industry, the BIPOC people that are working within the adult industry. But the same idea goes for that, right? Like, this idea that we need community, this idea that we need one-on-one trained professionals to support us in that line of work as well. So if you want to speak a little to that, I don't know where you're at with, if you want people to support any initiatives that you have going on, things like that.
Oh my gosh, yes, more yes. We are, so the BIPOC adult industry, the BIPOC collective, we took adult industry out of our name for banking purposes.
There you go.
We are there to provide financial support and educational webinars and mental health support for people who are working within the adult industry, both criminalized and legal forms of labor. And we are always looking to raise money. We have over 300 people currently who are in queue waiting to be funded. We are launching the top of the year, we're launching a one-to-one therapy fund We're also looking to we're looking to partner with some sex work friendly domestic violence initiatives to be able to offer people 48 hours of emergency housing and transportation to get out of violent situations. We're really there to we're really there to help people who are choosing sex work and sexual labor to be able to live their full lives without judgment, without shame, without judgment, without stigma. We are not a diversion program. If people want to get out, we are more than we are happy to help provide resources for that, or to search resources for that. But we're really just trying to make sure that people are provided for, that we can take care of the mental, physical, and emotional health, well-being of people in this industry. It is a passion project. We are a team of a small team of mighty volunteers who do a lot of heavy lifting every day. We are currently, there's just a lot of behind the scenes things that are happening. We recently just applied to become a field participation site for a university here in New York City. We're trying to get interns, social work interns, so that we can be able to, so that I can get my Saturdays back, and also we can do some referrals. We can refer people out to some other organizations and some other resources. But the one thing that we mostly need is we just need money.
Yeah.
And we recently got a fiscal sponsor, so soon you will see our fiscal sponsor's information on our website. We are, hopefully by the end of the quarter, you'll be able to start setting up recurring donations with folks, through Act Blue. We're just waiting for them to do that work as well. But things are slow because we live in a post-COVID society,
right?
COVID society.
Yeah.
But we're doing a lot of kind of behind the scenes work this year, because we were started in crisis, and so there were a lot of structural things that we didn't have in place that we need in place in order to be able to really, really help people. But if people want to donate through our GoFundMe, GoFundMe you can find it through our website, just so that we can, make sure that, we can continue to put money in people's pockets. I mean, every day we're getting emergency situations, and we just don't have enough money to be able to help everyone. We should not be playing God when it comes down to who deserves to get money, or we don't want to have people, give us a sob story in order to be able to justify why they need money. If sex workers say that they need money, they should be able to get it. We're living in a very, difficult time where people are, everyone is concerned about their health. Not everyone, but many people are concerned about their health. Many people are out of work, and sex workers are no different. Not every sex worker was able to migrate to OnlyFans when, last year when the pandemic started, and not everybody is able to, to make money while they're using these platforms. And so, being able to put money into the pockets of, of Black and Brown and Indigenous and Asian and queer and trans sex workers, who are, living at so many intersections of marginality, is really important work for us. So, I invite people to visit our website, go to the GoFundMe, visit, donate if they can. Help us to be able to put money directly into the pockets of sex workers.
It's beautiful. I love how there's no middleman. This is what I love the most about your work, is you're just you're talking to the sex workers right there. I remembered wanting that so badly as a sex worker. Who could I call? I don't know who to call, right? There's no one to call because you had to go through all these steps. And
we're trying to reduce the steps that we have. Right now we have, the biggest barrier that we have is money. I would literally need to have $120,000 in our GoFundMe to give everybody that is currently on our list money. We just don't have that. And now that we are, we're also limited by, one of our members who is a director at at a major company has a separate business account, and they've been receiving money for us, but there's a cap. because they are taking on tax liability. So we've had to do the legwork to get ourselves set up so that we could have our own bank account, so that that money is not so that we as an organization can take on that tax liability as opposed to someone else. And even then, like, people have offered to give us, you know, large sums of money, but it's like we need to be able to have a fiscal sponsor so that they can get a tax write-off. And it's like, it becomes very complicated. And not really the work that I set out to do, but understanding, you know, because now we're creating a middleman. But I realized that that is a necessary part of the process in order for us to be able to really do the work that needs to be done. You know, at some point next year, like I've been looking for a data analyst, for example, because we have data that needs to be, that we need to process so that we can then use that data to go to companies and push for corporate responsibility, because there are people on, you know, on platforms who are experiencing housing and food insecurity while simultaneously working on platforms that are making millions of dollars. Right. So, you know, but to be able to do that, like, it's like, if we are going to decolonize porn, if we are going to, you know, bridge the wage gap between Black and brown and queer and trans people of color who are working in the sex trades, we need to be able to have a little bit more structure than what we currently have to really do meaningful work.
You have to get in the game, right, in order to change the game.
You have to get in the game. I mean, some of the things that we're thinking about for the future, you know, next year, I want to be able to do a massive Medicaid enrollment program for sex workers. But to do that, we have to be able to connect with navigators, with certified navigators, and we have to be, there's just like certain things that we need to be able to do that as a grassroots organization is kind of outside of our scope, in terms of recruitment, in terms of money, in terms of staffing, you know, and to be able to bring on more people who are able to help us with the work we're doing, to be able to bring in more money so we can say, here you go, here's some money. Oh, you need rent, here you go. You need a hotel for 2 nights because you're leaving an abusive partner, here you go. You know, oh, you need diapers, here you go. Like there's just certain things that we need to be able to do. And it's heartbreaking when someone reaches out to you and you don't have an answer for them. And part of that answer comes from just being able to access more resources.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I'm hearing it. I'm hearing the call. I'm hearing the need, and I know the listeners are as well. So I love that you're spearheading this. What a huge undertaking, a big, huge passion of yours. And thank you, because it's something I've been thinking about for ages. And then I met you and I was like, oh, good, she's doing it, I'll support her, right? Like it's a big headache, right? Work in society to give these freedom to people that are marginalized. It's very challenging. So yeah, I'm behind it.
And it's hard because, you know, a lot of people who choose, and not everyone, but a lot of people who choose sex work are already, you know, like living outside of the fringes of society, and the government is not providing for them. I mean, never before, you know, before COVID, like we really, you know, like for those of us who experience these intersections of marginalization, like we already knew that these inequalities existed. But I think for the first time, everybody was able to see it. Like, you know, it's like because some of these inequities have trickled up to impact people who might not have been impacted before. You know, it's like what does happen when you can't go to work? What does happen when the risk of illness is greater than, you know, than your job that barely pays your bills? Like, it's like, you know, so many people are starting to see it, get it, understand it. And, you know, thankfully that allows us to be able to do this work a little more easier. People can say, oh, I get it now. Like, I went back to work, but I understand why other people haven't. Like, you know, I understand that people are concerned about their kids going back to school. You know, why haven't the schools shut down? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's where other people who may not have been impacted before are finally starting to see the, you know, with their I mean, not that they weren't being shown before, but they're really starting to see it for the first time in a way that is undeniable. That and that is only I can only hope that we continue to be able to do this work to bridge those gaps.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm, I'm behind you in that work, and I'm just loving who you are, right? As a sister who's walked a similar path. And thank you so much for gracing our audience today with your wisdom. You need to write a book if you have not already, like get some books out there, because there is so much in there. I want it out on paper, published. Next project.
Well, that's my to-do list.
Next project, or at least a documentary, babe. We got to go in. Come on. All right, great.
I have been asked to do. There was a documentary I was asked to participate in this month, and I was not able to participate in it. I've been in a couple of documentaries in the past, and I am interested in doing. There's more work that I want to do. There's so much. There is a book that is kind of that's brewing in the back of my mind. I'm ready. I've been a part of a bunch of anthologies. I'm looking to spread my wings and become an editor next year. There's so many things, not enough. There's only 24 hours in the day.
Right. And thank God we have Sex Magic behind us, right? We can make that shit effortless.
I need more hands and
I love it. Thank you so much for jumping on Money, Sex, and God. It's so good to see you. It's been a few months, and I'm glad we got to reconnect. So we'll meet again soon. So much love to you, babe. Thanks for jumping on. Everyone go check out BIPOC AIC. I have it in the notes section of the podcast, so you can donate and keep supporting them. Sinnamon, so much love. Thank you, babe. And I'll see you soon. All right. Bye.